Twist rate confusion again, how to hunt pronghorns, and what about those silencers? All on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast. Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you once again. Thanks to everyone for writing in with these great questions and corrections. And we're going to dive right into the mixed bag, starting with buck fever and flinching from CSI Pawpaw. I love your shows. Boy, you guys know how to butter me up and get your questions answered, don't you? I know you might have covered it before, but could you talk about shooting discipline and the problem with buck fever and using a large capacity semi-auto for hunting deer and other medium to large and fast game? Everyone is different. During a sudden and unexpected period of excitement, some people panic and lock up or overreact. Don't we though? Been there, done that. Others, not always, but sometimes, because of training and experience, perhaps they switch into an unemotional mood and they react calmly and deliberately. Well, that's what we're trying to do. Now, I have, says Pawpaw, an M1 carbine. Years ago, I took it hunting, and one of my many brothers-in-law saw it, and he decided to get one. He was a very experienced hunter, and he had taken a lot of deer in the past, but he took his M1 carbine hunting in brush country, and when a buck suddenly broke cover near him, he dumped a 15-round magazine at the running deer. He and I decided right then and there that he needed to return to his lever-action Marlin 336 for deer hunting. Buck fever, brought on or at least augmented by too many rounds in that magazine. And that's really a great point, Pawpaw, because I agree. I think when you have an autoloader and you have a large capacity magazine, you just think you've got the firepower and you start cutting loose. I was on a deer hunt years and years ago in Iowa, and it sounded like a war had broken out. Everything was bang, 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 bang. And I asked the landowner where I was hunting, I said, what is going on with all this shooting? And he says, it's the way the locals do it around here. Every time they see something they want to shoot at, they pull the trigger 3 times, whether they're aiming or not. It's a shotgun approach, I guess. It was pretty wild. But a good point that you're touching on here is that you do need to think about controlling this. And as you said, with experience, that helps. But gosh, even with all of my experience, I sometimes get too excited and I will get buck fever. It's crazy. So there are a lot of techniques, and I would invite all of you to let us know what your techniques are for getting over buck fever or not coming down with it in the first place. Some of it is to look at a lot of big deer mounts, for instance, or I think this is probably really valuable, is to maybe shoot at the archery targets where they'll have a full-size animal target with big antlers on it, and look at those big antlers, then look at the target, and kind of get used to seeing big antlers on a deer, a full-size deer, and then shooting calmly at it. And another really good one is to focus on your aiming point. Too many guys will just see those antlers and go crazy and not look at a specific target. And that, of course, is usually that little crease right behind the shoulder. If you can focus on that, it's the old aim small, miss small thing. And it really works. Takes your mind off those big antlers and everything else. So I would just say run through them some hunting scenarios and imagine yourself doing all these things and dry fire while you're doing it and all the rest of it. It works for sports players. Should work for hunters as well. It certainly works for me when I remember to do it. But I do want to hear from a lot of you on what tricks you use. You're out there waiting for that big buck to appear, or even if you're just hunting does, whatever, and when one pops up, you start to get the shakes and all. How do you control that? Now, let's hear from Coon Dog. I just got my CVA Cascade rifle in 30-06 and I compared it to the 308 that I already had. The increased recoil is very minimal. I did have a bit of flinch, but if I keep on the rifle, I can easily get over that flinch. I love that Cascade. I'm not a great shot yet, but I tell you, an inch at 100 is super good for me. So yeah, if you're getting inch groups at 100, or maybe you mean that you're within an inch of your aiming point at 100, there's nothing wrong with either of those. So Coon Dog, keep it up and enjoy that 30-06 as well as your 308. A couple of really great All-American options. Now, this topic is too many ads. I've been hearing from a few commenters that there are too many ads on these YouTube broadcasts that we're doing. I told them I really don't even see them once we produce them. I don't go back and look at them very often, so I don't really know how many ads are on there. But this gentleman, Drew Riggs, says 1 hour ago he told me that a suppressor show would be really cool. Oh, he's responding to one of these where I said, hey, do you guys want to hear about suppressors? Because someone asked for a review of them, and I wanted to find out how many folks were interested. So he's interested in that. But he also says, I don't think there are any more ads than average on your channel. Well, that's good to hear. And he says he loves my show. So that's why I just read that, I guess. I knew that was coming up. Now, this other gentleman, Fire the Coach, says, that's weird. I never see any ads. So he might have the Premier. I think you can get a Premier subscription or something to YouTube where you don't see ads on anybody. Someone wrote me and said they did that. Now, another way, of course, is to just go to RSO TV. That is our subscription service to all of our videos, and you get to watch those on RonSpomerOutdoors.com. It's $5 a month, but at least you don't have to sit through advertisements. If you don't enjoy those and you'd like to contribute $5 a month to this big production we put on, happy to have you at RSO TV. And we have a few more things on there that we can't necessarily show on YouTube. So some reloading videos, we were really going to get into those heavily, but YouTube doesn't allow that. But we might start putting more on RSO TV. If you want to get interested in that, let us know, and maybe we'll do it. Now, we're still in this Hornady 7 PRC issue, and a lot of people are really upset with it. We've explained it. We've asked Hornady to come on, and they did. They gave some good explanations, but that did not satisfy a lot of you, and I can understand why. Let's just read from some. This is Eric. He says, the problem is not that Hornady changed the powder. The problem is that they didn't tell us. Accuracy over velocity. Well, velocity is accuracy with rifle rounds. Not telling us that our elevation has changed will make your round much less accurate. Please update your box velocity readings, Hornady. That is, if you truly care about accuracy. Many of us are shooting dope based off of your old rounds, the initial data they had for that 7 PRC. Updating the box will tell many people what box they have so it corresponds with what the current dope is. Or they know they have a box and they have to redope the entire range if it's a different velocity. All right, that's his opinion. Now, here's from Amim828. Who gives a flying whoopie-doo, a different word in there. Who gives a flying about the printed velocity anyway? You're supposed to always confirm your muzzle velocity with your rifle. Yes, by using your chronograph. True, but not everyone has a chronograph, but that is a good point. And I would advocate doing that. And even if you don't have a chronograph, you can run the ballistic numbers using what's on the box of ammo, and that's their claimed velocity. If you're not getting that, if you shoot at 200 yards and 300 yards, and their drops say that you should drop 3 inches at 300 or 6 inches, and you drop 9 or 12, you will know that they've oversold the velocity reading on the box. So you can figure things out that way. But yeah, I think it is up to the individual shooter to test all that stuff, not just trust what's on the box. Irish Buck says, another YouTube content creator has found that most printed ammo on the box, no matter what caliber, is usually slower than they claim. Yeah, I have found that to be the case in the past, but I've noticed here in the last bunch of years that they're getting pretty darn accurate with some of these. Some of the Winchester boxes I was shooting in 6.8 Western, they were predicting around 29, 32 feet per second or something, and I was with 6 different rifles I was testing. I was within about 10 or 15 feet per second of that number on all of them. Really pretty impressive. So I think we might want to do some checking. Over the years, I don't think we really paid any attention to this because, heck, when I was a kid or even in my middle age there, I would get a 270 or 7 Rem Mag or whatever and just assume it was doing what it was supposed to be doing until I got the chronographs and started working with them and realized, whoa. But then I was mostly testing my own hand loads. But I just think it's the way to go, whether you're doing your drop tests or running your chronograph. All right, Tex Patriot. In my opinion, Hornady is committing a deceptive trade practice by selling ammo with box velocities they cannot make. Well, that might be true, but then there are a lot of other ones out there who don't match up. And I think it's probably not fair to expect them to absolutely match up just because of the differences from rifle to rifle. But I think that means 10 to 50 feet per second, maybe 100 feet per second. You get much more than that, and I think maybe it is a little bit of a stretch to be advertising that much difference. I don't know. What the rest of you guys think? How much leeway should we give them? And Awesome Dude says the 7 Rem Mag holds more powder than the PRC. Your argument is invalid. Well, you know what, Awesome Dude? You're right. I had heard from several sources that there was a little more, like about 3% more powder capacity in the PRC. But these guys were using water and getting their measurements in grains of water, weight of water in the case. And I thought, well, wait a minute. I know that cartridge cases are different in their internal volumes. Even though the outside dimensions are the same for SAMI specs and all, the insides don't have those. So some of them are a bit thinner than others. Some might have a thicker web at the base that the primer goes through. And as a result, the volumes are different. And I thought maybe I should just do some powder measuring here of my own and compare. So I took the PRC, and I only had the brass from Hornady for PRC. So the 7 PRC brass, I filled that up with H1000 powder, which is a real slow-burning powder, really good in both the 7 Rem Mag and the PRC for pushing a 175 grain bullet. So I ran a bunch of numbers, and I measured that powder. What I did is I filled it right to the rim, right to the top, which is unrealistic because nobody loads with powder right to the top. There's no room for the bullet. But it's really hard to get the powder level to where the bullet seats, depending on how deep you seat the bullet and all the rest of it. And looking down inside of that little case, it's pretty hard to see what you've got going. So even though there's a little bit of difference in the neck length on these two, you're going to get a little more powder, I think, in the 7 Rem Mag because of it's a little bit longer neck, if I remember right. At any rate, I thought, well, that's a fair way to at least balance them out here. So let's just run those numbers. So what I found was with that H1000 powder filled up right to the top, in the Winchester Western 7 Rem Mag brass, I got 82 grains of powder. In the Nosler 7 Rem Mag brass, I got 84.9 grains of that same powder. The Remington brass, 82.6 grains, and the Barnes brass, 83.1. So you can see there's quite a bit of difference in that 7 Rem Mag brass. What did the PRC get? 80.7. A little bit less than the Winchester Western 7 Rem Mag brass. I would say you're neck and neck, and a way more important number is what sort of velocities can you expect. So I went to the Hodgdon website for their load data, and I just asked it to give me all of the load data for the 7 PRC and the 7 Rem Mag, and I went to the top 3 velocity numbers and the powder that produced it. I came up with this. Both of them were measured with 24-inch barrels. The 7 PRC using Ramshot LRT powder, 80 grains of that with a C behind it, meaning compressed. So that handloader was literally pushing that powder together with the bullet when he seated it. 3,083 feet per second. And the chamber pressures that they measured were 62,400 psi. That's a little bit under what is allowed. I believe it's 65,000 for the 7 PRC. The next load was Accurate Mag Pro powder, 69.3 grains, 3,007 feet per second. Again, 62,400 psi, so plenty safe there. And then finally, this new Grand powder from Hodgdon, I think it was 69.9. I got some pretty scribbly writing right here. But they got 3,030 feet per second. So the PRC can do what Hornady advertised, but the complaint is it's the Hornady ammunition that's not reaching these speeds, not the handloaders. By the way, that 3,030 feet per second from that Grand powder was only producing 61,900 psi. So you've got reduced pressure. That means you're going to get longer barrel life with a load like that, as well as longer case life because you're not stressing everything quite as much. So that was pretty good information to get. That Hodgdon online website's pretty nice for that. Now the 7 Rem Mag There's your competition. And I have said, and many people say, just stick with your 7 Rem Mag, does the same thing. And to a degree, that is true with your velocities and such. But let's just see how fast we can go with your 7 Rem Mag. Using Winchester Stable HD powder, 72.1 grains, 2,898 was their top velocity. Now, that was with only 59,500 psi. But the 7 Rem Sammy specs for pressure, it's only 60,000 if I remember right. Might be 62, but I think it's just at 60. The Rem Mag, or the Ram Shot Mag powder, 70.4 grains, produced 2,879 feet per second. Pressure was up to 60,500 psi. And Ram Shot Grand, it was 72.2 grains at 2,940. That was the highest velocity on the Hodgdon site. But the PSI was only 59,700. So again, that Grand is working out really nicely to keep the pressures down. So, yeah, the 7 Rem Mag, a lot of people will load that hotter because they know that that brass is the same as the 300 Win Mag. And a lot of the other basic belted Magnum cases will allow 65,000 psi. So handloaders figure, well, if it's good enough for the 300 Win Mag and a 338 Win Mag and a 458 Win Mag and all these others, including the Weatherby Magnums, they're really pushing their pressures up. 65,000 psi on all of those. It's your same basic brass case. And the rifles are the same. Why don't we crank it up? And I have friends who will get a lot more velocity out of their 7 Rem Mags by doing that. But boy, you have to know what you're doing and be careful. I don't recommend you go out and do it unless you're an experienced handloader. Follow the directions in those manuals is the only advice I can really give you. But I think the upshot of all of this is that the 7 PRC can indeed shoot faster than the 7 Rem Mag, even though I do not believe it was designed to beat it in some kind of a foot race. If you want to go fast, you've got a 28 Nosler. You've got a 7 Remington Ultra Magnum. You've even got the old 7 STW. What they're trying to do with these PRC cartridges, whether you like it or not, is combine good velocity with really good precision. You know, it's those precision dimensions in both the cartridge, the ammunition, and the chambers, and then those long, sleek, high BC bullets, which, believe it or not, do contribute to better accuracy, as someone here hinted at. If you're minimizing your drops, and especially minimizing your wind deflection, you're increasing your accuracy. At longer ranges, if you get another 2 or 3 inches of deviation because of the wind deflecting that lower BC bullet more, there goes your accuracy. So the high BC bullets have their value in that realm. All right. Well, I think that's going to be enough on this 7 PRC for a while. Now we've got somebody we talked about using the face of a clock for calling our shots. You hit the target, where did you land? You landed to the northwest or the southeast and different things like that. And the military guy said, why don't you just use the clock face? It's a 1 o'clock hit, it's a 3 o'clock hit, it's a 9, it's an 8, whatever. And I mentioned in my last one of my podcasts on this topic that there's a lot of kids these days who don't know what a clock face is. They just look on their smartphone and see what the time is, and they run off the numbers. They don't see a circle like that. So I suggested a compass, and another guy wrote in and said, if they don't know what a clock is, they're not going to know what a compass is. Oh my gosh. But at any rate, let's see what Robert has to say about clock face shot calling. This is the guy who said it. As far as the younger generation not knowing a clock face, they will not map directions either. If the internet goes out, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't think they'll survive. Something to be said for that. Daniel Boone, if you turned him loose out here, he'd survive without even a compass. What was that famous line he had? He says, no, I've never really been lost, but I was a mite confused for 3 or 4 days. Oh, boy. All right, let's see. Eye relief in scopes from Ron. Nice name there, Ron. I like it. It's got a certain ring to it, doesn't it? Hey, also make sure that you use a scope with good eye relief and mount it correctly so that you don't get your eyebrow cut with the scope coming back. And what I would add to that, of course, is that the lower recoil in your rifle, the less recoil or the less eye relief you really need, because it's not going to come back as far. But if you've got a hard kicking rifle, you're going to want a good 3.5, at minimum 3.5 inches between that scope and your eye. But the bigger measurement, the more important measurement, is the distance from the rim of the scope, the metallic outside rim, not the glass. Actual eye relief is measured from the glass lens, the eyepiece lens, to your eyeball, not the brow of your head that sticks out further than your eyeball. So if you've got a 3-inch eye relief rating on your scope, you're probably working more like 2.5 inches. So you can get bonked with a high recoiling rifle. So do an actual measurement, set that scope up on your rifle, push it back and forth for that edge shadow business until you've got a nice clear view with no edge shadow, and say, there's the position. Now measure from your brow to the outside edge of the scope ring on the eye. That's what's going to be smacking you. That's what you want to be a minimum of 3.5 inches, and I like 4 a lot more. So what do you give up with a scope that has more eye relief? All you're giving up is a little bit of field of view. When you look through a scope, of course, you see a certain area out there called field of view. And some scopes will say, well, you're seeing 330 feet, or you're seeing at 1,000 yards, I think it is what they usually measure. And people get all excited about it, and they say, well, I want a wide field of view. Well, you can get that by reducing your eye relief. It's kind of like looking at a hole in a door, almost like a keyhole. The closer you get to it, the more you see outside. You get further away from it, and you get narrower field of view. Same thing's happening with your scope. You get further back, and you see less and less. You get in there close. They can make adjustments inside the scope for all of this stuff. But basically, all you're sacrificing is a few feet on either side. And I always say, when I'm shooting at an animal, I don't need to see half the county around that animal. I just need to see my crosshair where I want that bullet to go. So I will readily sacrifice a little bit of field of view for more eye relief, so I don't get the scope bonk. All right, here's something on silencers from Wayers. I would enjoy a deep dive on suppressors. Well, good. He is answering another question I put out there on a recent podcast, because some people were saying, tell us about suppressors. How do they work? How are they made? Is one better than another? What exactly do they do? And all the rest of it. And I asked for some comment. Are you guys interested in that? We're getting a few folks saying they are. Any more of you? We just got to reach a certain level of density of interest here, and we'll probably jump on it. I've already made contact with a gentleman at Silencer Central, and I was actually in a hunting camp with him last fall. Great guy. I had a lot of fun with him. And I'm going to try to get him on the show, interview him, and ask him all about how often do you clean them, what materials are best, how many baffles are in them, can you take them apart, how long do they last, and all these kinds of things. So if there's enough interest, I think we're going to get him on and do an interview. It will be Brandon Maddox from Silencer Central. We have a guest in the audience raising her hand. I'll bet you it's Betsy. We have to be careful on YouTube showing silencers. Yes, we're not going to be building silencers. We're not going to be putting them on and off rifles. YouTube will go, give me a black mark, and maybe you can throw me into a dungeon. But we will see what we can do. We might have to put the real detailed stuff on rsotv.com. Another reason to sign up for that one. Okay. Now we still have some twist confusion. This is really common these days. I always say, back when I was a kid, we didn't understand rifle twist, really. You just went and bought a rifle, you bought the ammo, and it all worked because the industry built things to work. Well, now we get these longer and longer and longer bullets, and people are saying, wait a minute, I've got to have a faster twist barrel. So they think there's a precise number that's going to work just well with one bullet and no others. Let's just see what this gentleman has to say. Thomas. Ron, this is Tommy, and I just bought the new Ruger American Predator Generation 2 in 7mm 08. It has a twist rate of 8.5. I chose the rifle as I would like to use monolithic bullets, and I thought this is better suited for that than the usual 9.5 to 9 twist rate offerings in other rifles for 7mm 08. Am I correct? And will the faster twist affect regular bullets such as cup and core or bonded bullets? So, Tom, I think your confusion is you're confusing the bullet's construction and materials with twist rate needs. It doesn't really matter what that bullet's made out of. I think you could make it out of petrified marshmallows. It's the length of the bullet that you're concerned with. The longer the bullet is, the faster your twist rate in the barrel has to be to stabilize it. Big long bullet out there in the wind is kind of going to go like that unless it's spinning really fast. So think of a top. You got a big, fat, wide kid's top. You start pumping that top and it kind of wobbles around. You get it going really fast and it straightens right up and away it goes, right? So with a long, long bullet, you have to have a higher twist rate. Doesn't matter if the bullet is made out of lead, gilding metal, jacketed, bonded, hollow point, tipped of any kind, or all copper, does not matter. Not the construction issue. It's just the length. And it's not the weight either. Most of us always say, we got a heavy bullet, you need a faster twist rate. That's only because, in general, if all the bullets are kind of made the same, the way they were back in the 20th century, gilding metal jacket, lead in the core, so the heavier bullet would naturally be longer. And that's why you needed the higher twist rate. And the twist rate is a complete turn in how many inches of barrel? So an 8, did you say an 8 or 8.5? 8.5. So in your barrel, after 8.5 inches, you will have that rifling make one complete turn. And that means your bullet will do the same. And that should stabilize it if it's a really long bullet. And it'll also stabilize the short ones just fine too. A lot of folks get all concerned, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to shoot anything less than 175 grain bullet in 7mm. No, it will stabilize the 150s and the 140s and probably the 125s and probably even some 90 grains if you can find them. I know they've got some 100 grain bullets out there for handloaders. I have taken fast twist barrels down to the lightest bullets, and they did just fine. Now, that I will put this little caveat in there for really precision bench rest, every bullet into one hole kind of shooting. Yeah, there is just the right twist rate for that particular bullet length. But I don't think as an average plinking and hunting and entertainment rifle that we're playing with, you really need to worry about that. But if you want to win the world's record for the tightest group, you're probably going to pay a little bit of attention to that. Now, I got someone asked me about pronghorn hunting, and I just put a few notes down here to remember to do this. I didn't even put the gentleman's name down, but he said he was going pronghorn hunting for the first time, and he wondered if I had any tips or tricks. How do you hunt pronghorns? And I can relate to this because when I was a kid on my first pronghorn hunt, my brother and I were out in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota, in pronghorn country, which looks about like this tabletop. There's just no cover out there. And having hunted whitetails and pheasants and rabbits and all kinds of game, everything tried to hide from you. So we're going, where are these pronghorn hiding? So we looked for the grassy ditches, brushy little draws and such, and thought we could bust them out of there. They weren't in there. We were finding mule deer and even a few whitetails. But the pronghorn were up on these naked grasslands with buffalo grass probably no higher than this. We couldn't believe it in the middle of the day with hunters prowling around. Why weren't they hiding? Well, they don't hide. They stay out in the open so they can see trouble coming. And then they run away, which is why they're considered to be awfully difficult to get close to make a shot. But I beg to differ on that. I have been on many hunts, outfitted hunts, in which the outfitter said, all right, hop in a truck and we're going to try to get close to that band of antelope. And I've never wanted to get in a truck to get close to anything. It's like, I've come here to hunt, not drive a truck. Let me out and I'll stalk them. Oh, you can't stop. What are you, crazy? You can't stalk these antelope. Look at how fast they're running. We just crested the hill and they're already taking off. Yeah, that's because they've been chased by trucks all their lives. Let me out and make a stalk. I can hide a lot better than your truck can. I try not to get into fights with these outfitters, but a couple of times we got pretty testy with one another. But I said, look, I'm paying for this hunt. Just I'll screw it up. Okay, it's on me. I'm not going to blame you. Just let me out and let me try it. But every time I've tried it, I got a lot closer than the truck ever did. I remember one time in New Mexico, against the advice of our guide, Ward Dobler and I got out to stalk this antelope that was going to be wild litter and snot and impossible to stalk, and we got within 150 yards of it. Nice big buck, piece of cake. Boom, got him. And the guy sitting up in the truck, well, I'll be darned. It's not that they're stupid or anything like that. It's just it's tradition. They grew up doing that. They really haven't experimented with it, perhaps, and don't think it can be done. But honestly, in a lot of these ranches, I don't know that the pronghorn had ever been stalked by a foot hunter. It's always how close can we get with the truck. So get on your hind legs and get out there. There's a lot of rolling country, bushes in the way. Just look at that animal. When he's not looking at you, move. Try to get behind something. Now, the other thing is to glass, glass, and glass. Get high and glass that country and see a buck and size him up. Find another one, size him up. I like to go a day before the season opens and just get a feel for who's out there. And then I can say, all right, I saw a really nicest buck I saw was over here. That's where I'm going to start hunting. So glass, find him, and then plan your stalking route. Now, if you're not finding anything by glassing or while you're glassing, also listen. Because territorial bucks during the rut, which is when most of the seasons are open, are going to be snort wheezing for their territorial defense. They want to tell all the other bucks out there, I'm here, this is my area, don't crowd me. And it sounds kind of like, it's a really cool sound. I just love that sound on a calm day, crisp morning, and you hear that snorting going on out there, you know you're in pronghorn country. The other thing they will do is get up on a high spot so that they can be seen. Same deal. My territory, stay away. Girls, if you see me, come on over. They're really quite a territorial animal in some areas. If they got good habitat all the way around, enough water sources and good food, they will be territorial. But in some places where it's really dry and they have to move to find forage and water, not so much. Sometimes there will be territorial with a herd of does, so the buck will attach himself to the band of does and follow those guys around rather than defending his own territory. Depends on the densities, but these are some of the fun things you learn when you pronghorn hunt. Here's the secret. I don't know if I should tell everybody this one or not because it's too easy. But if you're desperate, I only did it once, and the outfitter knew this trick, and he said, get behind this, and he unraveled some gunny sack, just tan material on two sticks. You hold one stick, I'll hold the other stick, and we'll walk toward those antelope. So we had this wall of burlap in front of us that was similar color to pronghorn, and I thought, yeah, it kind of looks like the dried grass on the prairie, and maybe they can't see us. They couldn't. I mean, they saw us, but they didn't think we were any kind of trouble because the biggest buck in the bunch came charging over there like he thought we were a threat or something. I don't know if he thought we were another buck, but he sure acted like it. He came within bow range, and my buddy shot him, 16-inch buck. So I call that my latch ditch effort just because I love to hunt and stalk and get in position for a nice clean shot with something like a 25-06. One of my favorite kinds of hunting. So that's what I recommend for pronghorn, guys. Now we're going to hear about the history of the Mauser versus the 30-40 Krag. Oh, this is from James. And this is in reference to some of the comments I make quite often about the Spanish-American War because that was a big deal for us to develop what became the 30-06. That was the war in which we sort of made a transition from the old rifles from the cowboy era, 45-70s and trapdoor Springfields. We were getting into the bold actions at that time. The Navy had one, the 6mm Lee Navy. Hotchkiss bolt action rifle from Winchester. Lots of things were happening. So we had this little conflict with Spain, and we went to Cuba. They had supposedly blown up one of our ships in the harbor over there. So Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders and the rest of the U.S. military went over there to teach them a thing or two, I guess. At any rate, I always talk about how the Spaniards really showed us what firepower was with their Mausers. They had the 1873 Mauser bolt-action rifle, chambered for the 7mm Mauser. This was in 1898. We had the 30-40 Krag as our first military round that was smokeless. And we were still not keeping up with them because we had a 220 grain bullet on that. And the 30-40 Krag's not a lot more powder capacity than the 30-30. And that was out, by the way, at the same time. But that's what we had for some of our troops. But we didn't have enough of them in the arsenal. So a lot of the guys were still using trapdoor Springfield 45-70s. And our Gatling guns were still shooting the 45-70. So we were a little bit behind the curve on our trajectory reach. At any rate, some expert in this field wrote in and chewed me out because I had said that the Spaniards were using spire point bullets, and I had that all wrong, and I shouldn't talk about history because I don't know what I'm talking about, and I should stay in my lane. And I told him, hey, I appreciate you filling us in on all these details, but I'm not going to stay in my lane because if I did, it'd be kind of boring. With my limited knowledge about things, that would be same old show every time, Ron. So I like to branch out a little bit and then invite you guys to straighten me out if I get it wrong. Because one of the things I have discovered in doing research is you will find conflicting information on many sites, whether it's old books but especially Googling stuff. You go, oh my gosh, this isn't right. I know this stuff. So there's so much information out there. So if I sometimes dredge up the wrong information, I depend on you guys to straighten me out. And that's what this gentleman was doing. No harm, no foul. If I get it wrong, I want to get it right. But now this gentleman is writing back and saying, well, wait a minute. And so James says, I wonder if Daniel was the guy who chewed me out, claiming that the stripper clip for the Mauser is superior to the Krag Jorgensen rifle that we were using. I wonder if he's ever done a comparison between the two. I'll bet that a mad minute comparison, that means in a minute you see how many shots you can get through your military rifle on target. The mad minute. I bet that a mad minute comparison would find very little difference between those two systems. I also haven't done the comparisons, but I would love to do so when I find a Krag military rifle to test. My preference would be to find one in a 6.5 by 55. I have loaded rifles with stripper clips before, and it's rarely ever very fast. The Krag system has its advantages, particularly logistically, as you don't need to manufacture the clips and supply ammo in clips to the forces. That would be a fun video to watch anyway. As Ron pointed out, it may not really have been a competition between the Krag and the Mauser as much as it was a competition between the Trapdoor Springfield and the Mauser. Also, it's worth noting that in the military, any poor performance on the field, it can't be blamed on a particular officer. It's usually blamed on outdated equipment. It will never be blamed on the higher-ups, ever. Also, I have seen people say that it was black powder versus smokeless powder, but the 3040 Krag was the first smokeless powder cartridge in American use. The 8mm French Lebel was the first smokeless powder cartridge, period, and that's true. So that might be accurate only if you assume the comparison between the 4570 and the 7x57, but not the 3040 Krag. That's right. The 3040 Krag was our first military smokeless powder cartridge. And as I mentioned, it came out about the same time as the 3030 Winchester, which was our first commercial civilian cartridge that was smokeless. So as I said, lots of things happening back in those days. Once again, clearing things up on the history here outside of Ron's lane. Now, here are some quick ones from Betsy again. I wonder if she's going to rip me up or give me some pats on the back. Let's try Tim. Hey, I love your videos, but consider slowing down on the 60-minute ones in favor of 30-minute ones. And then Betsy writes an aside and says, yeah, what do you guys all think? Time is precious. We start out to make it short, and then it gets away from us, and Ron goes on and on and on. Blabbermouth. Here we go. So what would you like? 2 30-minute podcasts a week or 1 60-minute once a week? Okay, a couple good options there. Weigh in on that one, guys. I think Betsy wants me to do 2 30-minute ones because she gets tired of sitting behind that camera while I'm blathering on. But I've got some guys who say they listen to me while they're driving and they like to just go on and on and on. And other guys are working in the shop and they have me as a background noise. And then there was one guy who wrote in and said I helped with insomnia. I put him to sleep at night. Equal opportunity insulter here. All right, let's see what Doyle says. Hey, on that history correction, the gentleman failed to mention that our military stated was the main reason for their advantage with the 757. The military said it was their use of smokeless powder, so he's agreeing with us on that one. All of our ammo was still black powder. Well, not all of it. Some of the 3040 Krag was not. Black powder gives away your position with every shot. We couldn't see them. Yeah, they would probably just shoot through the fog here and it'd get somebody. All right, what does Alex have to say? Hi, Ron. Love your content on hunting and cartridges. Can you do some content on how to prepare your game animals, or does YouTube ban this type of viewing? Yeah, and Betsy wrote on here, we have done a how to field dress a deer, and we put it on RSO TV because, yeah, YouTube kind of looks at some of those and goes, ugh, we don't like all this gutting and skinning and field dressing stuff. Sometimes you can get away with it, and sometimes they ding you, so we generally kind of stay away from it. But we did do one where I did a complete mule deer, if I remember right, and that's on RSO TV. I would like to do some more of that because I think it's a critical part of being a hunter. You know, it's one thing to get your gun and ammo and scopes and everything all ready to go and then how to hunt, like we talked about with the pronghorn. But once you've got the animal down, now the big job starts. You know, if you don't finish off the butchering of the animal and cutting up the meat, preparing your meals and all the rest of it, what was the rest of it for? So, Yeah, I think we're going to dive into some more of that this fall. We'll see if we can't do a few more. Thanks for that one. From Colorado, we have Andrew. I always like these because they list where you're from. The ones that I've gotten written down here, I don't know where you guys are from. These listed. This must come from our comment section on our website, ronspomeroutdoors.com. Then you can tell us where you're from. We'll give you some credit. And if you don't want us to tell everybody you're from Colorado, just say so or change it up and pretend you're from New York or something. I don't care. But we're going to assume that Andrew really is from Colorado. Ron, first I want to say I love the channel. A little about me, not me, him. A little about Andrew. I am an active duty Army officer. Well, good. Thank you for your service there, partner. Keep up the good work. And I have been a gun nut basically my entire life. Yeah, you and me both, partner. I specialize more in the semi-auto sporting rifles, with my niche being Vietnam-era AR-15s/M16s. Makes sense for a soldier. I have been a hunter since I was about 7 or 8 years old, but I have yet to down anything worth really writing home about. A couple of deer, a big California boar, and more doves and ducks than I can count. Well, that's not bad, Andrew. Now, for the background to my question. I am currently 27 years old. When I graduated high school 9 years ago, I used my graduation money to buy the first rifle I would own in my name. This was a Winchester Model 70 Ultimate Shadow 30-06. All indications showed that this was a brand new rifle, and the transfer paperwork I have indicates that as well. But on the first range trip, I noticed that the ejected brass was changing shape, which I had never seen before. Through research, I learned that my rifle appeared to have a 30-06 Ackley improved chamber. That was the first and only time I fired that rifle, firing approximately 20 to 30 rounds. After discovering your channel several months ago while I was in Korea, I had a newfound interest in my rifle and trying to figure out what was going on. After all, 30-06 AI would be a fun casing to reload for, which I aspire to learn how to do in the future. It does not make sense to me that the gun store I bought the rifle from would have reamed out the chamber, especially if they were selling it at a manufacturer's suggested retail price. I paid $699 for it in 2015. This leads me to believe that there was a mistake. It might have happened at Winchester. Perhaps they unknowingly put an AI barrel on my rifle. Worth noting, my rifle has no indication on any part of the barrel that it has the improved chamber, even with the stock off. I have emailed Winchester about this, but I doubt I will ever hear anything back. This leaves me with my question. I've read in a couple of articles that a 30-06 AI should not close on a standard 30-06 Go gauge, 1.940 inches. To make matters into my own hands, I purchased a 30-06 AI Go gauge and a regular 30-06 Go gauge from Manson Reamers to test this headspace myself, and the bolt closed on both with the cocking piece taken out with no resistance. I know this is further complicated by the fact that there's no SAMI spec for the 30-06 Ackley improved. So my question is my rifle safe to shoot? What would you do in my situation? And then he says, pictures posted here if you want to see them. Now, I trust you on this one because it sounds like you've really done your research, Andrew. This is strange. Winchester is not going to stick an AI barrel on because they never built rifles with Ackley improved chambers. Not that I've ever heard of or seen. No, they're going to make the standard SAMI-proof stuff. No rifle manufacturer is going to be building products that aren't SAMI approved that I know of, although Browning did it one time back in the day with the 22-250 before it was officially adopted by SAMI. But in general, you just don't see that. So I think what happened was that someone bought that rifle brand new and rechambered it right away. How it got into the store and they were selling it as a new rifle, that's the weird part. Nonetheless, there's nothing wrong with it, I don't think, if they did it right, if they chambered it properly for the AI. All that is, and I've got a cartridge here. It's not necessarily a 30-06, but just to demonstrate what happens. The 30-06 has a certain degree of shoulder on it. I think it's 28 point something minutes, and at any rate, it's fairly sloped. Well, if you push that shoulder forward and then sharpen it up to 30, 35, even 40 degrees, 40 degrees is the AI shoulder, Ackley improved shoulder at 40 degrees. You've got more space in it now, so you can put a little more powder in, shoot it a little faster. But Ackley, this was P.O. Ackley, the gunsmith. When he designed Ackley improved cartridges, he made all of them headspace the same as the originals. So the 30-06 cartridge headspace is at a certain position on the shoulder. It's the same with his, even though the shoulder is different. The datum point is the same from the lockup at the base, the bolt face, to the shoulder inside the chamber is the same dimension. So you can shoot factory-loaded 30-06 ammunition in a AI chamber, and it just, as you saw, reshapes it. It's called fire forming. You do it with a 280 AI, the 22-250 AI, and all the rest of them. So you should be absolutely safe. But taking it from me here on a podcast, I would suggest that you go to a gunsmith and confer with him. It sounds like you got some bad advice on that Go Gauge business and in the first place, so they don't always know. But man, I have just never heard that you couldn't shoot factory loads in an AI chamber if it was the same one. Again, 25-06 Ackley improved, 280 Ackley improved, 30-06, all of them are set up so that you can use factory loads in them. And then you just fire form that case when you shoot it. And most of them will shoot pretty darn accurately, too. You lose a little bit of velocity usually because you've got more space to fill up. So that all should work out for you, Andrew. Good luck on that. How are we doing on time? Oh, still got time. Let's go to Idaho. Wait a minute. We're in Idaho. All right, Derek from Idaho. Mr. Spomer, I'm an avid viewer listener, and you are one of those rare influencers that I actually trust. Oh boy, watch yourself, Derek. I watch the Backfire channel on YouTube from time to time, and I like Jim on there, but he made a comment that really stoked a fire in me. He said the 6.5 Creedmoor and the 6.5 PRC are the same cartridge. He even showed two rifles being fired back to back, and the results from the 6.5 PRC were less than impressive, to say the least. After spending $2,000 on a Seekins PH2 and 6.5 PRC, I was left feeling duped by Hornady after watching that brief clip from Jim. My question to you is, have you ever chronoed these two cartridges out of the same length barrel before? I can't find anything on the internet. All people do is a comparison video is read the numbers on the boxes. Anyone can do that. What I'm looking for is real-world comparison between the two. Any ideas? Thanks for your time, Derek. Yeah, Derek, you're sort of misinterpreting what Jim did on that one. I remember that. What he was trying to prove is that you get the same performance from both of those cartridges if you shoot the 6.5 PRC in a shorter barrel, which a lot of guys are doing now. They get a 6.5 PRC because it's about 200 feet per second faster than the 6.5 Creedmoor. Makes it about as effective as the 270 Winchester. They're pretty darn close in their ballistic performance. But then they decide they like these new rifles with the short barrels and stuff, and they get it in a 20-inch barrel so they can put a suppressor or something on it. Well, you're going to lose velocity by shortening your barrel. The barrels are usually 24 inches when they're tested for the ammo boxes and all the ammunition companies. They're testing generally in a 24-inch barrel. Sometimes they'll use 22, but that's where they get their velocity readings. So he was saying that, look, you're shooting your Creedmoor in a 24-inch barrel and you go 2,750 feet per second. Pretty good average out of 140 to 143 grain bullets. Well, you switch to the PRC and you're going to get closer to 2,950. And I've seen that on my chronographing with a 24-inch barrel. But you lop 4 inches off that barrel, you're probably going to lose 200 feet per second. You got the same thing. That's what Jim was saying. The performance is the same when you change the barrel lengths on them. So whoopee-dee. Nobody's trying to screw you over here. Nobody's pulling the wool over your eyes. I think you just sort of misinterpreted. I'm going to guess, I don't know, but I'm going to guess that Seekins precision rifle of yours in a 6.5, it's probably got a long barrel, but maybe not. If you have a 20-inch barrel or, heavens forbid, an 18-inch barrel, sure, you're going to be sacrificing a lot of velocity. We usually figure each inch of barrel cutoff is going to cost you 30 to 50 feet per second. Depends on the powder and the bullet and different things. But in general, that's what you can kind of figure on. So lose 4 inches, you're going to lose 200 feet per second pretty easily. So that's what your concern is. But I think you're going to be all right. The 6.5 PRC it just holds a lot more powder than that 6.5 Creedmoor. Keep your barrel lengths up there. They're not the same. All right. Colby from Alberta. I love hunting Alberta. What great country you guys have up there. And it goes from similar to, say, South Dakota, Montana with the dry plains, and then you get up north farther and farther, and you get into the aspen woods blending in with the plains, and lots of wetlands for waterfowl. You get huns and sharptails and ducks and geese and moose and mule deer and whitetail and pronghorn. Oh, there are worse places to live than Alberta. And then you go further north and you get into the boreal forests, and you've got bison up there and black bears, and you start to get into grizzly bears, and I think they've even got some caribou up there, lots of moose. What a great place. So I'm a little bit jealous here, Colby. What do you have to ask? Ron, I've been following you for quite some time now. I want your opinion on a problem I'm having with coyotes. Oh, I've been hunting them along the creek that flows through my grandparents' field. I was using a .22 long rifle. Then I switched to an old lever-action 30-30 with iron sights. The issue is there's quite a few houses around, so it makes it I can only take shots at maybe maximum of 200 yards. If I'm in the right spot and I'm shooting down a safe direction toward the creek. I was just looking for your opinion on a good caliber to use. The 30-30 seems a bit overkill. The 22 long rifle seems not quite enough energy for a coyote. I'm not looking for a super flat shooting caliber, as I can only really go out to 200 yards, maybe 200, if I'm in the right spot. So any suggestions on a caliber that you think would work best would be much appreciated, or any advice on other solutions. No, it sounds like you're thinking it through very carefully and rationally and doing a great job of being safe and all. But what I think you're looking for is a high-speed varmint type bullet of light weight. So think 22 Centerfires at minimum, and you might want to step down to the 20s, which would be mostly the 204 Ruger. 30, 32 grain bullet in that. Those lightweight bullets break up a lot more easily, so you're not quite as worried about bullets flying out there to somebody's barn or something, or house. But even smaller would be the 17s. And there you do want to look at the 17 Fireball, 17 Remington. What's another one? There's a 17 Fireball, 17 Remington. Isn't there not one more? I'm blanking right now, guys. But Centerfire 17 calibers, you'll be shooting 25 grain bullets, and it's just like you hit the ground and they just kind of go poof, and you're not going to get big ricochets. Big heavy bullets like that 30-30 is shooting, they're going to bounce and ricochet. More dangerous than these light fast ones. So no recoil in those 17s or the 204 Ruger really. It's just a little 22 Hornet might be fine out to 200. That might be a real good option for you too. 22 Hornet. I would look into that old campaigner. That one's been around a long time, but out to 200 yards, pretty good option. But even then, that's going to skip those 45 grain bullets a little bit more than the 17s will. So check out that 17 Fireball and the 17 Remington. And I don't know why I'm not thinking of that other 17 Centerfire. Seems to me there surely is one. Now, a really cool one is a rimfire that I'm afraid is going to fade away. I was hoping it would make it because it's a great rimfire. This is the 17 WSM, Winchester Super Magnum rimfire, and it outperforms the 22 Win Mag as well as the 17 HMR. But finding rifles chambered for it anymore is getting really difficult. But that was a smoker. You want to look it up sometime. You can go to my channel and look at 17 WSM. I've got several videos on it. I was pretty high on it there for a while when it first came out. One of our sponsors is Shell Shock Ear Protectors. Some young folks started up a new company, and they're doing something different with these. There's a classic muff. I don't have one with me right now, but if you're looking to protect your hearing and you put muffs on, so many of them clamp so tightly they give you a headache, and then you sweat under them, and they're just not comfortable. These things have some kind of a gel around the rim of them, and I've just noticed I can sit there for a long time shooting, and I don't feel like I've been clamped in a vise. And they knock about 28 to 30 decibels of sound off, like most of them do. And of course, they've got the battery thing in there, so you can turn up the microphone stuff or speaker, and you can hear conversation, and when you go bang, it shuts it off and your ears are protected. I've been using them now for a couple of 3 weeks, and I'm really enjoying that. So you might want to look them up. A new company, Shell Shock. They're working on some new products I'll be eager to see, but we're happy to have those folks along as a sponsor. Now, what about our comment of the week? Hey, here we go, folks. Ringing the bell for our comment of the week. We're going to give this one to Tommy, who asked about the twist rate. And the reason I want to give Tommy the award this week is because this is the kind of question that helps all of us learn, and I always enjoy those. So I hope you remember what I said about it. Twist rate, and that has to do with the length of the projectile, not the manufacturer's materials in that projectile or even its weight. It's just the length of it. So when you're looking for twist rates, if you want to shoot the really longest bullets in any particular cartridge, go for the faster twist rates. Make sure it will stabilize those. If it stabilizes the longest ones, it will stabilize the shorter ones just fine. Thanks, Tommy. You are our comment of the week. And of course, got to give a shout out to my buddy Doug. We're going to have him on a show here again real soon with one of his rifles. He is the sculptor who makes these bells. And he's getting tied in, I think, with some military stuff with what, Gary Sinise, was it? Gary Sinise has a good program for helping veterans and stuff. And they are getting some of these bells donated by Doug, I believe, to help raise funds for these programs. Doug is always helping out with things like that. And boy, if he can put more of these gun barrels into his sculptures, I think we're going to sell a lot more of them. He's got a shotgun barrel on here. I want to see some rifle barrels, Doug. Bring them on out. These are the Freedom Bells, and Doug has me shoot the bases on some of these that he builds up, and that's always fun to help him out with that little project. And I think we're due to do a few more, so you might want to check out Doug Adams. He's on our website, ronspomeroutdoors.com. He's also in several galleries around the West, and he does a great job with his bells. Hey, everybody. I really appreciate you joining us. Thanks again for sending in all your questions and answers and history lessons. Until next time, hunt honest and shoot straight.